Now we just want to take a couple of minutes and talk with you about barcode printing. And I have Ashley Hawkins here. He's our Technical Services Director over at POS Nation. And Ashley, thanks for coming. Basically, we just want to kind of give each customer a rundown on the Barcode Express printing module. So what we want to discuss are things like if we want to print barcodes for everything, or if we would just want to print for a couple. So if you just want to kind of walk us through, that would be really great.
Sure. Well, the easiest way to access the barcode printing module, Barcode Express, in the software is simply logging into the software to the cashier's front screen here to begin with. And so when we get in, we're going to go right underneath the Pay button. We have the Options button here, and that brings us to the back-end management console where all the functionality is. And we're going to go to the Setup screen, and then Barcode Express should be right here. If you have it activated, it will show up. If you don't have it activated, we can get that unlocked for you. And when we first come into the software, you'll have a few options up on the screen. The first one here is that we do have a label select, and that allows us a little bit of functionality selecting different label formats that are preset in the software. Now, I'm not going to set that. It's already preset where we want it. And at this point, we're going to be able to go into the software, and there's a button up here under the Options button. We have a Mark All. And so if we're starting out with an initial inventory and we just want to print out a couple of labels for every item in the system, we can select that button. It's going to prompt us for how many items we want to preset for each item in the system, how many barcodes we want to preset. I'm going to preset 2 labels for every item in our whole system. Now what's going to happen is over here on the right-hand column, you'll see a heading called Number of Lab. That's short for Number of Labels. And you'll see that it has a number 2 under each line item here. That means that we've already set this program up to print 2 labels for every item in our system. Now after every barcode printing session, you're usually going to want to go back up to the Options button and unmark all, just so that you start with a clean slate. Now if we would just want to go print a single item or a group of items that we've received in for inventory, then the easiest way to go do that is once we bring up Barcode Express, we're going to go to the Go To Item button right down here. And that's going to ask us to scan a barcode on one of the items that we're looking at. I've done that with my cola here. And it's going to pull up that line item. And I'm just going to go over here and select the number of labels, and I'm going to type in 2 for that. Now, if we had multiple items that we're printing barcodes off for at the same time, then we could just, after we hit return, after we select the number, we can go up to another item. I'm just going to select one of the other items on the list here, and I'm going to type 3 for that one and hit return, and that sets those 2 items up. Now I'm going to have a total of 5 labels print out for this particular run. And at that point, after we've made sure we've selected the right label format and we've got those selected, we're going to just hit the print button, and it's going to print off our labels nice and neat for us. And now here's our list of labels that we had, and these are pretty standard format labels. And I'm going to take that label off right there, and I can just go ahead and slap it on my product if I want to. Obviously, the Coke's already labeled. We would be typically using this in a situation where we have unlabeled items.
Okay. Well, the other thing that you just brought up was standard labels. Okay. Now let's talk about maybe some of the limitations that this might have, and what other options if you need something that's really a non-standard label. Let's talk about that for a second.
Sure. Well, you know, for non-standard labels, that's usually most of the time if somebody has an existing system with UPC codes like on the back of this cola here, that'll be something that's just really easy to set up in the system. We see the most complications that people have is when they go off making their own barcodes for the first time and they really don't understand some of the basic safety rules and things to make that go smooth for them. You know, one of the basic safety rules of building a barcode initially for an item that's not in the system is keeping it to about 12 to 14 digits. If we go over that, you can see that there is a finite space on this label, and people don't really think about the space that they have. But really, just to be safe, 12 to 14 digits will about fill this up, especially if you use alphabet characters that tends to make it go further across the label. The biggest things that we want to do in the formatting, though, when we're creating those labels, we want to realize this is not a number for us to look at and reference. This is a number for the computer system to keep track of. And so that's a big key, that we don't want to put a long description for the item number. It needs to be a number of some sort. So you would come up with some system that allows you to create each item with a serial procedure. And when you do that, you want to keep your item numbers, those barcode numbers, to being just numbers and just alphabetic characters, and you might possibly have a slash or a dash, but I wouldn't go off doing periods and some of the other dollar signs and things like that. That can actually cause confusion in the database system that would render the system having some troubles. So we keep it to that 12 to 14 digits. And the biggest rule of thumb, because sometimes if we're using a non-standard label, this is our standard label size, 2 inches wide by 1 inch. But we also have various other labels that the system can print, butterfly labels, things that go around a piece of fine jewelry, and some other shapes and sizes. You really don't have an idea spatially for how much space you have there until you print out a few. So it's always best to build 2 or 3 items and then actually go print out some labels and see what it looks like before you continue inputting your entire database. That will give you time to make some adjustments before you have 1,000 items in your system. You have to go back and change the formatting.
Okay. Well, the other thing I'd like to take just a second as well and talk about user error mitigation. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the whole reason for point of sale is to actually mitigate user error. So just explain to us for just a second the differences between using something like the TS lookup feature and actually printing barcodes, or utilizing an item that actually has existing barcodes, and how that's going to tie into potential user error.
Okay, sure. Well, we do have different options and different levels of user error that we want to mitigate against. I usually tell people if they just have 5 or 10 items or so in their system that are not barcoded, the TS lookup's a really great tool to save the money of a barcode printer and barcode printing modules and that sort of thing. As you can see, once we open up the TS lookup here, we have 18 items that will show up on one screen. Now, you could select a particular department and those front 18 items will be there. We can scroll through, but that becomes troublesome to have to scroll through a department and try and dig up an item. So it's always best if we have 5 or 10 items, we might want to create a special department there that would be for non-barcoded items. And like this miscellaneous items department, you can see that there's only a handful of items, maybe 12 or so in here, and that makes it pretty easy for us to quickly identify and see a particular item without getting overwhelmed with the selection of items in our system. Once you get to over 18 or 20 items, you start getting into 100 items or so that are not barcoded and that you don't have another way to look up in the system. It's really best to start barcoding those for sure, because the barcode system allows you a much more fail-safe method to locate your item quickly. There's no error. Once your barcode scanner scans that barcode, it's going to call up the right item. There's no chance for you to possibly be in a hurry and push the wrong button here on the touchscreen lookup, and start messing up your pricing that you're selling the items for, or your inventory levels.
Well, Ashley, I definitely appreciate you coming by. That's really informative. And one other thing I'd actually just like to discuss is, and to give you a little indication on, is that Barcode Express, we were talking about non-standard labels and non-standard barcodes. It actually has a little bit of a limitation to it. Usually you can see in there's only a few different selections that you can have for a style of barcode or a style of label. And we have Bartender, which is an alternative to that really takes you to another stratosphere of being able to produce your own barcodes. So you definitely can consider that after you've maybe looked at Barcode Express or demoed it for a second, and it can really help you make the right choice. So we appreciate you, and Ashley, appreciate you coming by, and hopefully that was informative enough, and that was Barcode Printing.